Imagine waking up tomorrow, and for one entire day, your phone never vibrates, no notifications, no messages, no endless scrolling, no background noise, no music filling every empty moment, just silence. How long do you think you could sit with it? 5 minutes? 10? An hour? Or would you instinctively reach for something, anything to escape it? That question may seem simple, but hidden inside it is one of the greatest mysteries of modern life. Why are we so afraid of silence? Think about your average day. The alarm wakes you up. Before your feet touch the floor, you're checking your phone, news, emails, social media, videos, podcasts, conversations. By the time night arrives, your mind has absorbed thousands of voices, yet somehow you still feel exhausted, not because you've been doing too much, but because you've been hearing too much. Our world has become louder than ever before. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants your attention. Everyone is competing for a few seconds of your focus. In the middle of all that noise, one voice slowly disappears. Your own. Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace. Hundreds of people are shouting at once. Some promise success, others predict failure. Some tell you what to buy, others tell you who to become. Now imagine trying to hear a whisper in the middle of that chaos. Impossible. That whisper is your inner wisdom, and every day the noise grows louder while the whisper grows quieter. Perhaps that is why so many people feel lost. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they have forgotten how to listen to themselves. There is an old story about a young traveler who climbed a mountain in search of a wise hermit. After days of walking, he finally reached a small cabin overlooking a peaceful valley. The young man immediately began speaking. He talked about his failures, his fears, his ambitions, his relationships, his frustrations with the world. The old hermit simply listened. When the young man finally stopped talking, he asked, "Master, what is the secret to finding peace?" The old man smiled. He pointed toward the valley below for several minutes. He said nothing. The young traveler became uncomfortable. He shifted his feet, cleared his throat, looked around impatiently. Finally, he asked, "Why aren't you answering?" The hermit looked at him kindly. "I already have." The young man frowned. "I don't understand." The old man replied, "You came here searching for peace, but you were afraid to experience it." Sometimes the answer we seek does not arrive through another voice. It arrives when every other voice finally becomes quiet. That is the paradox of silence. It feels empty, yet it contains everything. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth. His days were filled with political conflict, military campaigns, and endless responsibility. Yet some of his most profound insights were written not in crowded halls, but in moments of solitude. He did not discover wisdom by escaping problems. He discovered it by creating enough inner silence to think clearly about them. Today, silence has become rare. Many people cannot eat without watching something, cannot drive without listening to something, cannot walk without checking something, cannot wait in line without scrolling through something. We have become uncomfortable with stillness. Why? Because silence has a way of revealing what distraction hides. It reveals unresolved fears, unfinished dreams, old regrets, hidden loneliness, questions we've been avoiding. Distraction helps us postpone those conversations. Silence invites us to have them. That is why it feels uncomfortable. Imagine entering a room that has been locked for years. Dust covers every surface. Cobwebs fill the corners. At first, you may want to close the door and walk away. But if you remain, if you slowly clean the room, eventually it becomes a place of peace. Your mind works the same way. Silence is not empty. It is where inner healing begins. Psychologists have discovered something remarkable. When the brain experiences moments of quiet reflection, it begins organizing memories, processing emotions, solving problems, and strengthening creativity. Many of our best ideas don't appear while we're rushing. They appear while we're walking alone, sitting quietly, watching the rain, looking out a window, taking a deep breath. The mind doesn't only need stimulation, it also needs space. Think of a lake. When the water is constantly disturbed by wind and waves, you cannot see beneath the surface. But when everything becomes still, the water turns clear. You can suddenly see stones that were hidden moments before. Your mind is exactly the same. The constant noise of modern life stirs your thoughts like a storm. Silence allows clarity to return, and clarity changes everything. History offers countless examples: inventors, writers, philosophers, scientists. Many of their greatest breakthroughs came during quiet moments, not during constant activity. Because silence is not the absence of progress, it is often where progress begins. The Stoics believed that before you can lead others, you must first learn to lead yourself. And before you can lead yourself, you must become familiar with your own mind. That cannot happen if every moment is filled with distraction. Imagine carrying a compass through a dense forest. If you never stop walking, never pause, never look down, how will you know if you're heading in the right direction? Silence is that pause. It allows you to check your direction before you travel even farther. Perhaps this is why so many people work harder every year, yet feel no closer to peace. They have mastered movement, but forgotten stillness. They know how to chase, but not how to reflect. They know how to speak, but not how to listen. Over the next few chapters, we'll explore why silence has become one of the rarest forms of strength in modern life, what psychology teaches us about the power of stillness, and how the timeless wisdom of Stoicism can help you transform quiet moments into your greatest source of resilience, clarity, and inner power. Because sometimes, the strongest voice you will ever hear is the one that speaks only after the world becomes silent. There is a question most people never ask themselves: why do I always need noise? Not just the noise around you, the television playing in the background, the endless music, the podcasts during every walk, the constant scrolling, the conversations that never seem to end, but the noise inside your mind, the endless stream of thoughts that follows you everywhere. Plans, worries, memories, regrets, imaginary conversations, future problems that haven't happened yet. Many people believe they are physically exhausted. In reality, they are mentally overwhelmed. Their bodies are tired because their minds have never stopped speaking. Imagine carrying a radio that never turns off, day and night. It broadcasts opinions, fears, advertisements, comparisons, and distractions. At first, you hardly notice it. Eventually, you forget what true quiet even feels like. That is how many people live today. Constant stimulation has become normal. Silence feels unfamiliar, and anything unfamiliar often feels uncomfortable. Modern psychology helps explain why. Our brains are designed to notice novelty, every notification, every new message, every unexpected sound triggers a small burst of attention. Over time, the mind begins craving constant stimulation. Without realizing it, we train ourselves to become uncomfortable with stillness. The result is a dangerous cycle. The noisier life becomes, the harder silence feels, and the harder silence feels, the less opportunity the mind has to recover. Imagine running a marathon every single day without ever sleeping. Eventually, your body would collapse. The mind works much the same way. It needs moments of recovery, moments where nothing is demanded of it, moments where it can simply exist without pressure, without comparison, without performance. Silence is not wasted time, it is mental recovery. Think about nature. A forest is never truly silent. There is birdsong, wind through the trees, flowing water. But notice something different. Nothing is competing for your attention. Nothing demands that you react immediately. Nature offers presence rather than pressure. Perhaps that is why so many people feel calmer after walking through a park or sitting beside the ocean. The environment invites the mind to slow down. There is a beautiful story about an old musician who spent decades teaching young students. One day, a student asked Master, "What is the most important part of music?" The young students expected him to speak about melody or rhythm or technical skill. Instead, the old musician smiled and said, "The silence between the notes." The room became quiet. He continued, "If every note were played without pause, there would be no music, only noise. Life follows the same principle without silence. There is no space to appreciate meaning, no room for reflection, no opportunity for wisdom to appear." Psychologists have found that quiet moments allow the brain to organize experiences, strengthen memory, regulate emotions, and improve creative thinking. Some of humanity's greatest discoveries didn't happen while people were rushing. They happened while someone was quietly thinking, walking, reflecting, observing. The answer arrived because the mind finally had enough space to find it. The Stoics understood this long before modern science. They believed that a restless mind creates unnecessary suffering, not because the world is always difficult, but because constant mental noise distorts reality. Imagine looking into a mirror while someone continuously shakes it. No matter how beautiful the reflection may be, you cannot see it clearly. Your thoughts work exactly the same way when your mind is constantly agitated. Reality becomes distorted. Small problems appear enormous. Temporary setbacks feel permanent. Minor criticism feels deeply personal. Silence steadies the mirror. It allows you to see life as it truly is, not as fear imagines it. There is another psychological truth worth understanding. Many people avoid silence because silence introduces them to themselves. Imagine sitting alone in an empty room with no phone, no television, no music, and no conversation. At first, many people feel uncomfortable, not because silence is painful, but because it removes every distraction. Suddenly, old memories appear, questions arise, dreams that have been ignored quietly return. The conversation you've been avoiding finally begins. This is why distractions can become addictive. They postpone self-reflection, but postponed reflection eventually becomes postponed growth. Marcus Aurelius often withdrew into quiet reflection not to escape reality, but to prepare himself for it. He wrote that people search for peaceful places in the countryside, by the sea, or in the mountains. Yet the greatest retreat is always available within your own mind. Think about that. Real peace isn't something you travel to, it is something you cultivate. No matter where you are, imagine carrying a small garden inside your heart. Every day, the world throws dust into it. Stress, arguments, deadlines, criticism, comparison. If you never stop to care for the garden, eventually, weeds begin to grow. Silence is how you tend that inner garden. It allows gratitude to grow, patience to deepen, wisdom to take root. Without those quiet moments, the weeds spread unnoticed. There is an old tale about a king who visited a famous sculptor. The king admired a magnificent statue carved from marble. He asked, "How did you create something so beautiful?" The sculptor replied, "I didn't create it. I simply removed everything that didn't belong." The king looked confused. The sculptor smiled. "The statue was always there. I only chipped away the excess stone." Silence works in exactly the same way. It doesn't give you a new self. It reveals the one that has been hidden beneath endless distraction. beneath fear, beneath noise, beneath constant busyness. The strongest version of yourself has always been there. Silence simply removes what has been covering it. This is why the Stoics valued stillness so deeply, not because they wanted to withdraw from life, because they wanted to return to life with greater clarity. A calm mind notices opportunities that anxiety overlooks. A peaceful heart responds wisely where anger reacts impulsively. A quiet spirit remains steady while the world becomes louder. Perhaps the greatest irony of our generation is this: we have never been more connected to one another, yet many people have never felt more disconnected from themselves. The solution may not be another motivational speech, another notification, another opinion. Sometimes the greatest teacher is silence itself, because when the noise finally fades, you begin hearing something extraordinary. Not the world's expectations, not other people's judgments, but your own inner wisdom, and that quiet voice has been waiting for you all along. Imagine sitting alone before sunrise. The world is still asleep, the streets are quiet, the sky is painted with the soft colors of a new day. For a few precious moments, nothing is asking for your attention. No one expects an answer. No notification demands your focus. There is only silence. Most people would call this an ordinary moment. The Stoics would call it an opportunity, because they understood something that modern life often forgets. Silence is where character is built, not in the applause of the crowd, not in heated arguments, not in endless conversations, but in those quiet moments when no one is watching and you are left alone with your own mind. This is where Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life. Although he ruled the most powerful empire on earth, he knew that the greatest kingdom he would ever govern was the one within himself. Every day brought impossible challenges. Wars stretched across Rome's borders. A devastating plague swept through the empire. Political conspiracies surrounded him. Trusted allies betrayed him. Members of his own family died. If anyone had an excuse to become bitter, anxious, or overwhelmed, it was Marcus Aurelius. Yet instead of allowing the noise of the world to control him, he returned again and again to silence. Not because silence erased his problems, because silence gave him the wisdom to face them. His private journal, later known as Meditations, was never written for fame. It was never intended to become one of history's greatest philosophical works. It was simply one man speaking honestly to himself. Think about that. The words that have inspired millions for nearly 2,000 years were born not from public speeches, but from private reflection. That is the hidden power of silence. It allows truth to emerge without the pressure of performance. Imagine standing beside a perfectly still lake. When the water is calm, it reflects the mountains with astonishing clarity. Every tree, every cloud, every ray of light. But throw a single stone into the water, and the reflection disappears. The mountains have not changed, only the surface has. Your mind works exactly the same way. When it is disturbed by constant worry, anger, comparison, or distraction, reality becomes distorted. Silence settles the surface. And when the surface becomes calm, wisdom becomes visible. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of a simple but profound truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Those words have survived because they address one of humanity's oldest struggles. We spend enormous energy trying to control people, circumstances, and outcomes. We become frustrated when others misunderstand us. We become anxious when the future remains uncertain. We become angry when life refuses to follow our plans. The Stoics asked a different question: what remains under my control? That single question shifts your attention away from the chaos outside and back toward the peace within. Another remarkable Stoic, Epictetus, understood this lesson perhaps even more deeply. Unlike Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus was not born into privilege. He began life as a slave. His body belonged to someone else. His freedom was limited. His future seemed uncertain, yet he discovered something no master could ever own: his mind. Epictetus taught that true freedom begins the moment you stop allowing external events to dictate your inner peace. Imagine someone handing you a heavy stone every time they criticize you. Would you carry every stone for the rest of your life? Of course not. Eventually, the weight would become unbearable. Yet many people do exactly that with emotional burdens. They carry every insult, every disappointment, every rejection, every opinion, year after year. The Stoics offered another path. You are not required to carry everything people hand you. Some burdens can simply be left where they belong. There is an ancient story about a young warrior seeking instruction from an elderly Stoic teacher. The young man proudly declared, "I want to become the strongest fighter in the empire." The old teacher smiled. Then he led the warrior into a quiet garden. For nearly an hour, neither of them spoke. Finally, the impatient young man asked, "When does the training begin?" The teacher looked at him and replied, "It already has." The warrior frowned. "We haven't done anything." The teacher gently shook his head. "You've spent the last hour fighting silence. How will you ever defeat fear if you cannot first become comfortable with stillness?" Those words changed the young man's life, and perhaps they contain a lesson for us as well. Many people are constantly searching for greater strength. They chase more information, more motivation, more productivity, more success. But they overlook the quiet place where strength is actually formed, not in endless action, but in intentional reflection. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, often withdrew from the distractions of public life to examine his thoughts. Every evening he reflected on his actions. Where had he acted wisely? Where had emotion influenced his decisions? What could he improve tomorrow? Notice something remarkable. He wasn't judging himself. He was studying himself. Imagine a skilled sailor returning after every voyage. Before setting sail again, he carefully inspects the ship. He repairs small cracks, strengthens weak ropes, adjusts the sails, because he knows that tiny problems ignored today become disasters tomorrow. Self-reflection works the same way. Silence allows you to repair your character before life's next storm arrives. The Stoics believed that the loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. True strength is often invisible. It appears as patience when others become angry, as humility when others seek attention, as calmness when others panic, as quiet confidence when others desperately search for approval. Imagine an ancient oak tree standing alone in a wide field. Season after season, fierce winds strike its branches, storms bend its limbs, snow covers its leaves, summer heat dries the earth beneath it, yet the tree remains. It doesn't argue with the wind, it doesn't complain about the seasons. Its strength comes from roots hidden deep beneath the ground. Silence creates those roots. Within us, roots of patience, roots of discipline, roots of wisdom, roots of courage. The world celebrates visible success. The Stoics celebrated invisible character because they understood that every lasting achievement begins where no one else is looking, inside the mind, inside the heart, inside the quiet moments when a person chooses growth over distraction. Perhaps that is why silence feels so powerful. It removes the audience. It removes the performance. It removes the need to impress anyone until eventually only one question remains. Who are you when no one is watching? The Stoics believed the answer to that question determines everything else, because if you can remain peaceful in solitude, you will remain steady in chaos. If you can hear your own conscience in silence, You will not be controlled by the noise of the crowd. And if you can build a strong inner world, no storm in the outer world will ever be powerful enough to destroy it. There is a reason the tallest mountains never announce their height. The deepest oceans never boast about their depth. The strongest trees never argue with the wind. They simply stand. Their presence speaks louder than words ever could. Yet many of us live the opposite way. We feel pressured to explain every decision, to defend every opinion, to prove our worth, to respond to every criticism, to fill every moment with conversation, as if silence somehow makes us weak. But what if the opposite is true? What if silence is not the absence of strength, but the evidence of it? Imagine two people standing before a mirror. The first cannot stop talking about who they want to become. They describe their future success in vivid detail. They tell everyone about their plans. They seek encouragement before they've taken the first step. The second person says very little. They quietly wake up before sunrise. They practice. They fail. They learn. They improve. Months pass. Then years. Eventually, the first person still has impressive stories. The second person has results. The difference wasn't talent. It was where they invested their energy. One spent it on words. The other spent it on action. There is an old Japanese saying, "The bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists." The bamboo doesn't argue with the storm. It doesn't try to overpower the wind. It moves with wisdom instead of ego. And because it bends, it survives. Silence often works the same way. Many arguments are not won by speaking louder. They are won by refusing to let another person's anger become your own. Modern psychology supports this idea. Researchers have found that people who create space before responding are more likely to make thoughtful decisions, regulate their emotions, and resolve conflicts effectively. When we pause instead of reacting immediately, the brain has time to engage the parts responsible for reasoning, empathy, and long-term thinking. In other words, silence creates room for wisdom. Think about the most respected person you've ever known. Perhaps it was a teacher, a grandparent, a mentor, a leader. Chances are they weren't respected because they talked the most. They were respected because when they finally spoke, people listened. Their words carried weight because they weren't wasted. There is a story about a young swordsman who traveled across the country to challenge a legendary master. The young man was fast, confident, and eager to prove himself. When he arrived, he shouted insults at the old master. He questioned his reputation. He demanded a duel. The old man remained silent. Minutes passed. The young warrior became even more frustrated. Finally, exhausted by his own anger, he turned to leave. One of the master's students asked, "Why didn't you answer him?" The old master smiled. "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The student replied, "To the person offering it." The master nodded. So it is with anger. That simple lesson has survived for centuries because it reveals an extraordinary truth. Not every emotional invitation deserves your acceptance. Someone insults you, that is their action. Whether you carry that insult for the next 10 minutes or the next 10 years, that becomes your choice. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He knew that every moment spent arguing with fools was a moment stolen from becoming wise. He chose silence not because he had nothing to say, but because he had something more valuable to protect: his peace. Imagine your attention as a small bag filled with gold coins. Each morning, you receive a limited number. Every argument costs a coin. Every unnecessary worry costs another. Every pointless comparison takes a few more. By the end of the day, many people have spent their entire fortune on things that never truly mattered. The Stoics asked us to spend our attention more carefully, because where your attention goes, your life follows. Psychologists often describe attention as one of our most valuable mental resources. It is limited. It cannot be endlessly divided without consequence. When your mind is constantly jumping from one distraction to another, your ability to think deeply begins to fade. Silence restores that ability. It strengthens concentration, improves emotional regulation, enhances creativity, and perhaps most importantly, it reconnects you with yourself. There is another story about an elderly stone sculptor working on a massive statue. Day after day, visitors passed by. Many laughed. It still looks like an ordinary rock. Others criticized his slow progress. Some told him he was wasting his time. The sculptor never argued. He simply kept carving. Months later, the finished masterpiece stood before the village. The same people who mocked him now praised his brilliance. One child asked, "Weren't you angry when everyone doubted you?" The sculptor smiled. "If I had spent my time answering every critic, I would never have finished the sculpture." How many dreams remain unfinished because we stop to answer every opinion? How many goals disappear because we spend more energy defending our intentions than fulfilling them? Silence protects momentum. Every unnecessary explanation slows your journey. Every argument steals your focus. Every attempt to convince everyone drains your strength. The strongest people understand that not every misunderstanding needs correcting. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every opinion requires your attention. Sometimes your greatest answer is a life well lived. Imagine an eagle soaring high above the mountains. Have you ever noticed that eagles rarely fly in noisy flocks? They rise quietly, higher and higher, above the storms, above the confusion, above the constant noise below. The higher they climb, the quieter the world becomes. Perhaps growth works the same way. As your character becomes stronger, your need for external validation becomes weaker. You no longer feel compelled to prove your worth. You simply become it. The Stoics believed that inner peace is not achieved by controlling the world. It is achieved by controlling your response to it. That response often begins with silence, not the silence of fear, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of confidence. The silence that says, "I know who I am. I don't need to win every argument. I don't need everyone to understand me. My character will speak louder than my words." In the end, silence is not about withdrawing from life. It is about entering life with greater clarity. It is choosing thoughtful action over impulsive reaction, purpose over performance, depth over noise. Because the world will always have people who speak loudly, but history remembers those whose quiet strength changed lives. And perhaps your greatest strength has never been hidden by a lack of ability. Perhaps it has simply been waiting on the other side of silence. By now, one truth has become impossible to ignore. Silence is not empty. It is full of possibility. It is where scattered thoughts become clear, where emotional storms begin to settle, where wisdom quietly replaces impulse. But understanding the value of silence is only the beginning. The real transformation happens when silence becomes a daily practice. The Stoics knew that character is not built by grand gestures. It is shaped by small habits repeated every day. Just as a river slowly carves through solid rock, quiet, consistent actions slowly reshape the mind. So how do we cultivate that kind of inner stillness in a world that never seems to stop talking? Let's begin with the first practice. 1. Begin every morning in silence. Before reaching for your phone, before reading messages, before checking the news, give yourself 10 minutes of complete silence. Sit by a window, watch the sunrise, listen to your breathing, notice your thoughts without chasing them. Imagine waking in a peaceful forest. Would your first instinct be to search for noise? Probably not. Yet many of us begin each day by inviting the entire world into our minds before we've even greeted ourselves. Marcus Aurelius often began his mornings by preparing his mind before facing the demands of the day. Your mornings shape your mindset, protect them carefully. 2. Learn the discipline of the pause. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Not every criticism deserves an instant response. Not every emotional reaction should become an action. When someone speaks harshly, pause. When frustration begins rising, pause. When fear starts creating stories, pause. Imagine an experienced chess master. They don't make their next move the instant their opponent finishes. They observe, reflect, then respond. Life rewards those who think before they react. Silence creates that opportunity. 3. Keep a Stoic journal. Marcus Aurelius never intended meditations to become famous. It was simply a conversation with himself. You can do the same. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what disturbed my peace today? Did I react with wisdom or emotion? What lesson can I carry into tomorrow? Notice that these questions are not about perfection. They are about awareness. Every honest reflection strengthens your character. Imagine polishing a mirror each evening. Little by little, the reflection becomes clearer. Your journal serves the same purpose. It helps you see yourself more truthfully. 4. Spend time alone without escaping yourself. Many people are physically alone but mentally distracted. The television remains on. Music fills every room. The phone is always nearby. True solitude is different. Take a quiet walk without headphones. Sit in a park without scrolling. Watch the sunset without taking a photograph. Simply experience the moment. At first, your mind may become restless. That's normal. You've spent years training it to expect constant stimulation. Be patient. Eventually, something beautiful happens. The silence that once felt uncomfortable begins to feel like home. 5. Speak less, observe more. The Stoics believed that listening is a form of wisdom. Imagine entering every conversation with one goal: to understand. Before being understood, notice how people reveal themselves. Observe body language, tone of voice, moments of hesitation, the emotions hidden beneath their words. The quieter you become, the more clearly you begin to see others. And surprisingly, you also begin to understand yourself better. Silence sharpens perception. 6. Create boundaries around noise. Not all noise comes from sound. Some of it comes from information. Constant news, arguments online, endless notifications, comparison on social media. Imagine trying to grow a beautiful garden while allowing strangers to throw weeds over the fence every day. Eventually, the weeds take over. Your mind deserves better. Choose carefully what enters your attention. Silence sometimes means turning off the world long enough to hear your own thoughts. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is wise. 7. Practice the Stoic view from above. Whenever a problem feels overwhelming, pause, close your eyes. Imagine rising above your city, above your country, above the earth itself. From that perspective, how large does today's problem appear? Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the vastness of time and the universe, not to make life feel meaningless, but to remind himself that many worries become much smaller when viewed from a wider perspective. Silence makes that perspective possible. 8. Let nature become your teacher. Nature never rushes. The seasons arrive exactly when they should. The river never competes with the mountain. The stars never hurry across the sky. Yet, everything unfolds beautifully. Spend time observing nature. Not for entertainment, for instruction. Notice how strength often appears quiet. The tallest tree grows silently. The sunrise announces itself without words. The moon changes the tides without making a sound. There is a lesson hidden in every quiet landscape. 9. Replace the need to impress with the desire to improve. 1. Of the loudest forms of noise is the constant need for approval. Many people explain every decision because they fear being misunderstood. They announce every goal because they crave encouragement. The Stoics encouraged something different. Work quietly, improve privately. Allow your actions to become your introduction. Imagine two candles in a dark room. One constantly talks about how brightly it can burn, the other simply shines. Which one lights the room? Your character will always speak louder than your claims. 10. End every day with gratitude and stillness. Before sleeping, turn off every screen. Sit quietly for a few moments. Think of 3 things you're grateful for. Not the extraordinary, the ordinary, the breath in your lungs, a meaningful conversation, a lesson learned, another sunrise waiting tomorrow. Gratitude softens the restless mind. Silence allows gratitude to grow. Together, they create peace, and perhaps peace is the greatest form of strength. Imagine an ancient lighthouse standing beside the sea. Every night, waves crash against its foundation. Storms arrive without warning. Powerful winds howl across the coast. Yet the lighthouse remains still. It doesn't chase the waves. It doesn't fight the wind. It simply stands where it was built. Your mind can become that lighthouse, not because life stops testing you, but because your foundation becomes stronger than the storms around you. This is what the Stoics spent their lives practicing, not the pursuit of comfort, the pursuit of steadiness, not escaping the world, learning how to remain peaceful within it. These habits may seem simple: 10 quiet minutes, 1 thoughtful pause, a short journal entry, a walk without distractions, a few moments of gratitude. Yet simple habits, repeated consistently, transform ordinary people into extraordinary ones. Day after day, choice after choice, silence stops feeling like an empty space. It becomes a source of energy, a place where courage is strengthened, where patience deepens, where wisdom grows, until one day people begin asking why you remain calm when everyone else seems overwhelmed. They assume you were born that way, only you know the truth. Your strength wasn't found in the noise. It was quietly built, one silent moment at a time. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. The world around you hasn't become quieter. People still criticize. Social media still demands attention. Bad news still fills the headlines. Life still brings unexpected disappointments. Storms still arrive. But something is different. You are different. The things that once disturbed your peace no longer control your emotions. The opinions that once kept you awake at night no longer determine your worth. The distractions that once stole your focus no longer pull you away from your purpose. Not because life became easier, but because your inner world became stronger. That is the quiet miracle of silence. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world around them. The Stoics chose a different path. They learned to control the world within. Marcus Aurelius never asked for a life without hardship. He asked for the wisdom to meet hardship with courage. Epictetus never wished for perfect circumstances. He wished for the strength to remain free, regardless of his circumstances. Seneca never believed peace was found by escaping life. He believed peace was created by mastering the mind. 3 different lives, 3 different journeys, 1 timeless lesson. Your greatest strength is not found in what you say. It is found in how peacefully you carry yourself when life becomes difficult. There is an old story about an elderly stonecutter who spent his entire life carving beautiful statues. People often gathered around his workshop. Some praised his work. Others laughed at how slowly he carved. One day, a young apprentice asked, "Master, Why don't you answer those who criticize you?" The old man smiled as he continued shaping the stone. Without looking up, he replied, "Every minute I spend arguing is one less minute spent becoming better." Years later, the apprentice realized that the master's greatest masterpiece wasn't the statue. It was the character he had quietly carved within himself. Perhaps that is what silence truly does. It carves away pride, it softens anger, it weakens fear, it teaches patience, it strengthens discipline, and little by little, it reveals the person you were always capable of becoming. Imagine an ancient lighthouse standing alone on a rocky coastline. Night after night, storms crash against its walls, lightning splits the sky, powerful waves strike its foundation. The lighthouse never shouts at the ocean, it never argues with the wind, it never begs the storm to stop, it simply continues shining. That is what real strength looks like. The world often mistakes loudness for confidence, but true confidence rarely needs to announce itself. It appears in the person who stays calm while others panic, who listens while others argue, who forgives while others seek revenge, who keeps working while others seek attention. Silence is not weakness, it is self-control, it is patience, it is wisdom, it is the quiet confidence that no longer depends on applause. Think back. To the beginning of this journey, we asked a simple question. Why are we so afraid of silence? Perhaps now you know the answer. Because silence introduces us to ourselves, and meeting ourselves honestly is one of the hardest things we will ever do. But it is also one of the most rewarding. Because once you become comfortable with your own company, you stop chasing the approval of every crowd. Once you trust your own conscience, you stop being controlled by every opinion. Once your peace comes from within, the world loses its power to steal it. So today, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next 7 days, create one moment of intentional silence every day. Just 10 minutes. No phone, no music, no television, no notifications. Simply sit, breathe, observe your thoughts without judging them. Listen, not to the world, but to yourself. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. Stay anyway. The greatest treasures are rarely found on the surface. They are discovered by those willing to go deeper. And silence is the path that leads inward. If this story has helped you see silence in a new way, don't let it end here. Choose one habit from today's lesson and begin practicing it today. Share this video with someone who feels overwhelmed by the noise of modern life. You never know whose life could change because of one quiet moment. And if you're committed to building a life of wisdom, resilience, discipline, and inner peace, subscribe and join this community. Every week, we explore timeless Stoic philosophy and practical life lessons that help us become stronger not through force, but through self-mastery. Remember this, the loudest river is not always the deepest. The tallest mountain never announces its height. The brightest stars shine without making a sound, and the strongest people are often the quietest, because they have discovered a truth that the world constantly forgets. You do not need to raise your voice to increase your value. You do not need to prove yourself to everyone. You do not need constant noise to live a meaningful life. Sometimes the greatest transformation begins with one quiet moment, one peaceful breath, one still mind. Embrace silence, protect it, return to it often. For within that silence, you will discover something far more powerful than the world's approval. You will discover yourself, and once you find that quiet strength within, no amount of noise outside you will ever be able to take it away.